Hello everyone. Let's see here. Oh, we have a lot of people already connected to us. So it's very nice to be here and talk a little bit about ReactJS to you. And it's pretty amazing. Let's see here. Yes, everything is okay. Everyone is hearing me very well, clearly. Let's see here. Oh, so today I'm going to talk about ReactJS to web and to mobile, and we are going to cover some topics and covering some questions that is used in interviews about React. And oh yeah, everyone is listening very clearly, right? First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Tulio Faria, and I'm the founder of DevPlano, an online school here in Brazil, where we teach how to use ReactJS and how to be a full stack developer right now. So we cover right now just two topics, but we have experience teaching other topics as well, because I've been working in this area for more than 18 years right now. So I already have some experience using all this stack and technologies that we are going to talk during these days, and it's pretty nice to share a little bit with this experience with all you. So yes, we have a lot of people here. It's amazing. We have Pedro, Joel, Daniel, Dani, Angelo, Lara, yes, Maria, Matias, Rogério, Robson, Anderson, Roger, Vitor, very nice. Adley, Landy, Mário Mucida, Robson, Spencer, Thiago Alencar, Reginaldo, Irony, Harrison, yes, pretty amazing. Let's see, I think I said every name here. So good evening everyone, and thank you all of you to be here with me and during this evening to try to learn more things, to hear about some topics in React that is pretty important to interviews. So I've been through React interviews about 2 years ago, so I'm passing through these interviews a lot, and I'm going to share a little bit of the concepts that they ask during these interviews. So we are going to cover some of these questions, and I will explain why this is important to understand and to see the picture that the recruiter is trying to get from you. So it will be very nice here. Hello Beatriz, hello Marcos, Paulo, yes, Cristiano, Bruno Tortado, yes, very nice. Guys, one of the things that we are going to do right now, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we have some topics and some questions. I will answer that questions to you, and we are going to discuss these topics. So some topics are pretty basic and other ones are a little bit complex, but my idea here is to explain why they are trying to get this question. So why they are asking this, or why we need to understand this to be able to create amazing apps using ReactJS. So here we are going to cover a little bit of these concepts, and it's amazing because we can use these concepts even in web or in React Native or React for mobile devices. So we can use the same philosophy, the same concepts, the same tools for both platforms, or even more platforms, because we have right now ReactJS for web, React Native for mobile devices. We have React VR for virtual reality. We have React Windows for Windows apps. We have React for Arduino, React for everything. So I'm going to explain to you why this is important, why React is so powerful to cover these platforms, and why this is so important to understand these concepts to be hired, for example, for skip the dishes. Okay, And later at the end of the session, I'm going to open to see the questions. So it will be very nice. I will pick some questions from you, and we are going to cover and answer those questions. Okay, let's see here. I think everything is okay. Let's just check. Okay, so just a second. Here. So today we are going to talk about ReactJS. The amazing thing about ReactJS is we can cover basically all the platforms just using or just knowing the concepts of ReactJS. So if you know how to use React for web or React for React Native for mobile devices and etc., we can create React apps for every platform. So the concepts are the same, the way we are creating components are the same, so we just need to adapt some things to each platform. So, but we can reuse these concepts, reuse this experience to other platforms. So that's why I think React is so powerful and so requested right now, because we can use the same experience to deliver apps, amazing apps for web, for mobile, for etc. So that's why it's so nice. So we are going to cover some really basic topics. So the first one, what is React? So I think most of you know what React is, but it's important to reinforce this. So it's important to us to be on the same page. So basically, React is a UI library. So we are just covering and creating user interface with React. And yes, just user interface. So React is just the what we can see in the application, and it's a little bit different from Angular, from other frameworks, where we have a full spectrum of tools surrounding the framework. So React only deals with the user interface. So React is very simple, very small, and we can create amazing things. So why it's so powerful? Why we can create so many things using React? Because React has an ecosystem, a very powerful ecosystem. So if we need to create, for example, state management, we can use Redux, for example. So if we want to create some requests, HTTP requests, we have other models that can help us with this. If we can, for example, use a date picker, we can just use these components as well. So React is surrounded by many models that can improve our experience with the library. So that's why it's so powerful. So we don't have just one way to create something. We have many options. So we can use Redux, we can use Flux, we can use reactive and etc. So we can use many ways of creating our apps. So it's amazing because we can just see, as we can see in the menu, and pick the tool that we want to use. So it's amazing because we can adapt this to a team. So Skip the Dishes can use React one way, or other team can use React other way. Just some considerations. Sometimes I'm going to read some questions or some phrases here from the chat. Just to be clear, here Pedro said that it's just the view from MVC, but React is not only the view. So it's important because we are going to create a little bit different from MVC. So it's important to know this, because when we are using Angular, for example, so usually people compare React with Angular. Angular has model, view, and controller, and etc. And in React, we don't have this kind of thing, because we try to model the modulator, design the application a little bit different. So it's some of the topics that we are going to talk today too. Okay. Rogério, just to be clear, there is absolutely nothing in common with the React. I think that it's not related to these libraries, okay, Rogério? I think React Cocoa, React Swift, and etc. is just a way to use reactive in those languages. So I think it's not anything related to this, okay? Caio Falsino, you can ask questions on the chat. I will read the questions later, but you can use the chat to make questions, okay? Let's see. So first thing, React is just a library, so it's small. Just handle the screen and just handle how things are handling in the screen. And it's component based, so we create everything in React is a component. So here we are going to tell or to talk about components and high order components or stateless components and etc. So everything is a component. So React is just a bunch of components together that we can assemble and use to create an app. So it's just this. And what is a component? Component, it's a piece of code. It's the smallest piece of code that we can have, or the unit of code that we can have here in React. And usually this component just render something on the screen. So and we can have some behavior inside of it too. So we can put together behavior and how this will look on the screen. Basically is this. And the most important thing here, it's used in a declarative way. So usually what we are doing in React just reacts to a state. So if we have a counter, for example, inside a component, we can just tell how this counter will be shown on this component. So that's it. So we just declare how things will look inside the component based on some state. Right now we are just telling this is a state and it's not related to any other thing. So this way we can just ensure that the state is true. So we can create our app in a way that state is always true, and all the interface and all the components and etc. will just react to this state. So if we can ensure that the state is okay and is true, for example, we can rely that the components will be true as well. So we can show the same information from this state. I'm going to show some examples here. Will be very, very nice here. And the most amazing thing, we can learn once, so we can learn these concepts, the React itself and other tools, and we can write anywhere. So we can write an app for React Native, for mobile devices, we can use React VR for virtual reality, and etc. So we can learn once and apply this everywhere. So of course, there's some difference between platforms, but the concepts are the same, okay? Let's change it here. So if everything is a component, how we create a component? So how can we create a component in React.js? We have three forms or formats to create a new component. We can use ES5, we can use ES6 class, or we can use functional stateless components. So we have these three types of components, and this is the first question that is very common in interviews. So how we can create components in React? It's, for example, ES5 right now, it's not so well used. Right now we are using a lot ES6 classes and functional stateless components. But we can create a component using ES5 with no problem. So how they look? So how a component will look or would look in ES5? So we can import this. So we can import the create React class. So for ES5, and later we just create a new object calling this constructor. So this guy here, create React class, will just use this object inside here to tell how to create a new component. And here we have the render method where we show to React how to handle or how to render or how to make this component on the screen. So it's very nice. Other important thing, we have other way of creating React components. And the second way is using ES6 classes. So it's a little bit more organized. So we can organize a little bit more. So in this case, we can use import because it's ES6, and Webpack and other things will handle this import and etc. to us. And we can use as this. So we can use the keyword class, give a name for the component. This component needs to extend components, and we have the render method. So all the components needs to have a render method. So we need to put this very in every component. So we need to put the render method inside every component. So the component can return nothing or null, but they need to have render. So we need to say that the component is rendering something, even this something is null. So we need to ensure that the component render something. Guys, later I will answer every question, okay? And the latest shape that we can have here in React components, we can use functional stateless components or components. So it's pretty amazing. Take a look. I don't know if it's clear enough to you, but using functional stateless components, we are creating React components using perf functions. So what is a perf function? It's a function that only depends on the parameters or the parents. So here we have the props, that is a parent, and we are returning a new elements or JSX. I will talk about this in a minute. So why this is so nice? We can create this component, and everything that this component renders on the screen is only based on the input here. So we put a thing here in props, and the component will render something on the screen. So just this, and we are good to go. So it's amazing because take a look on this. The component depends on a class, we need to extend, we need to render, and etc. And here we have this keyword. In this case here, as we are using an arrow function, I don't know if you are familiar with this, but this is a function for us. So it's a way of creating a function. So we don't have this inside of this type of component. So why this is important? Stateless, because we don't have this. So we don't store state in this component. This component is only based on the props. So it's pretty amazing, because if you want to test this component, what we need to do here? In this case here, for example, I need to test if greeting is working. What I need to do? I need to pass a key inside props with name, and we just need to see if this function will return the same prop here. So if it looks the same, I can ensure that this function is right. In this case here, it's a little bit harder because we have state inside this component. So we can store something inside this component, and every time that I call this component, it's a little bit different. So it's not the same as on this component here. Okay, so it's amazing because this guy here, we have a promise here from the React team. If we use this kind of component, we are going to be improved every single release of React. So if we use this way, we are ensuring that our components will be long-lived. So we can use this for more versions of ReactJS. So in this way, maybe sometime it breaks for some reason. So maybe they change the name of render or something like this. But this way we can ensure that the company will long live, because we are just using as a function here. Okay. So right now I'm going to start some questions that I got from some of these interviews, and I'm going to share with you what is the proper answer for these questions and why this is important. So right now we understood what the React is, how we can create some components, and now we are going to cover some questions that touch some concepts in React, and I will explain these concepts to you right now. Some of them is pretty easy, some of them are a little bit complex. So if later I'm going to answer all questions from the chat. So we are going to cover everything that from these questions here and these concepts here. So the first question is, what is virtual DOM and why is it so important? So the first thing that we need to understand here, when we are creating components in React, for example, this component here, when we create this component, imagine that we just have this component here. React will assemble this structure in memory. So this is called virtual DOM. So we have this tree-like structure where we store this shape here. So in this case, H1, we put this inside this tree, and this text here we put inside this tree too. So, but the amazing thing about this, it's we keep this structure on memory. So why this is so important? Because we can make mutations on this virtual DOM in this structure faster. So we can change this structure, and later React just translates this structure to the real DOM, for example. So this virtual DOM can be translated to the real DOM. And why this is so important to React Native or to create mobile apps? Because we can just map the same virtual DOM to native components, or we can get those components or those structure and render to the browser, for example. Of course, we are going to use different components. So for example, for React Native, we can use a view, or in React DOM for React Web, we can use a div. But the way this is converted is the same. So and it's amazing because React itself is the same for every single platform. So when we use this kind of structure here, so we are importing React. React is React for every platform. So the structure is the same. So that's why we can use the same experience, the same concepts, the same architecture, the same way of getting data, and etc. in every platform, because the React itself is the same. The way we are updating the components is the same. And we have the translator different in each platform. So we have React DOM for web, we have React Native for mobile devices, we have React VR for VR, and etc. So the translator is different. So it's almost the same as a virtual machine for Java, for example. So we have the bytecode, here would be the React, and we have the translator to run this code in every platform. It's almost the same thing, just translating things. So and one of the things that it's pretty amazing here, React knows how to better mutate the real DOM based on the virtual DOM. So for example, there is some approach here, some ways of changing the real DOM based on the mutations of the virtual DOM that is faster than changing the DOM itself. So it's better do this. So for example, mutate the virtual DOM first and later apply those changes in the real DOM. So it's cheaper in research consuming, for example, and it's faster. So that's why it's so nice to use React in mobile devices or in web platform. Okay, so one of the things that's pretty amazing, if we have 5 components, for example, React it's smart enough to know which component will be updated in the real DOM, so, or in the native platform, for example. So it uses some approach that is faster, and they know exactly which component they need to update. So it works amazingly fast. So it's amazing, this kind of thing. Other thing that we have here is if we are going to create tests or unit testing here, we don't need to test the translator. So we just need to test the virtual DOM. So if I have a component, if I have, for example, this component here, I don't need to test if it will render well on screen, because we just need to test if we generate the virtual DOM right. So we just need to know if you are returning the proper value. Later, in unit tests of the React DOM, for example, they are going to test if the translation is being done perfectly. So for unit testing, this is amazing as well. So we can test the component very fast because we can test in Node, for example. So we don't need to spin up a new browser, and it's faster to run unit testing using React. So why is it important? Because allows us to use more platforms with the same concept, and we can create unit testing without using a browser, for example. Okay. And other thing that is pretty amazing, when we use virtual DOM and we have this guy that translates to the native platform or the real DOM for browsers, etc., we are very performant in this situation. So when we are using a React Native app in Android or iOS, it's look and feel like native. So if you get an app created using React Native, we can really feel the app. So we get the app and we can see that it's pretty native. It's different. Try to get, for example, an Ionic or Cordova app. You are going to see that looks like HTML and CSS and etc. In React Native, for example, it's native, so it look and feel like native. So that's why every company is trying to move to React because of this, because it looks and feels like native. So you get the app. It's hard to say that it's not native. So it looks and feels really well. So it's not a web browser running something. So it's truly native components. Okay. And we have another question that it's asked a lot. So what is JSX? So what is this terrible letters here? Because everyone, when saw JSX, tries to kill himself because it's ugly. When we start using JavaScript and we can see here some HTML and we're, oh, like what is this inside the JavaScript? So it's a little bit weird to see HTML inside JavaScript, but the fact is JSX it's just was built to make our lives easier. So why this? Because if we don't have, for example, JSX, we would need to create our components using a structure like a tree. So we will need to create a component like this. So without JSX, we need to create something like this. So we need to create element we need to tell which type of element is this guy, the children, if this component have something inside of it or not. Here, if I'm not wrong, it's props, and here what is inside this component. So we need to build the structure like this. So later we need to put another create component in here or here, and we need to build things this way. So with JSX we can use a better way of writing the same code. So it's the same from here. So we have H1 here, we have H1 here, we have the text here, we have the text here. So it's easier to create components in React this way. So in fact, later Webpack and other tools will translate this to this structure here. But to create components, it's pretty easier to use this syntax. So JSX exists to make our lives easier. So we can create the same feature or component or structure using some HTML-like language. But the fact is, JSX is JavaScript. So the most important thing to know about JSX is really JavaScript. So that's why we need to not use, for example, class keywords. So we need to use class name, for example. If we want to put a class in this H1 here, we can't use class, because when we are going to convert to this way, we need to put this as a key here, and class is a keyword, so we can't use this inside the code. So it's just this one thing that we need to remember. JSX is JavaScript. So everything that we can't do in JavaScript, we can't do in JSX. So it's important to know this. So it's easier because we can create this structure using something like HTML or XML. So we can create the structure of the interface using a language that is more user-friendly. So we can create a tree in a more user-friendly way. So it's better to create components this way. And should I really need it? So I need JSX? In fact, no. We can create components without JSX. But we start creating some components that are very complex. So it's easier to create using JSX. So we don't need this, but it's easier, faster, and we can increase the way we can maintain the code using JSX. So it's better using JSX. So it's just a matter of getting used to see this kind of thing inside a component. So it's hard at the first moment, but it's something that we need to get used to. Another really important thing we can see here, every example that I wrote here. So for example, greeting and etc. I am always importing React. So why I need React if I don't use it inside of it? So another concept that is very important. Every time that we use JSX, so here we have a JSX. Every time that I use JSX, I need to import React. So even if React is not showing here. So why this? Because when we convert this, we are going to use the React keyword inside the code. So this code will be converted to this. So we need to import React so we can see this variable here. So it's very important to know that we need to import React. Okay? So we talked about how the structure is built and stored inside memory. How is it translated to real code? And one of the most important things too. So we have this structure here. So we have this component. So when I will update this name here, so how can I update this name here? And we have two cases or two triggers that makes a component re-render, so they render again. So these two chains or these two triggers is an internal state change. So a component when we create using ES6 class, and if we create a internal state inside this, we mutate this state, the component will re-render. So we will ask, again this method here. So we call render again, or we call this function again. So every time that we have an internal state change, so this will trigger the update of the component. Another thing that triggers a change, it's a props change. So when we are using here, we are not passing any props here. But if we change the props, so for example, if we insert another props here, like the props in HTML, for example, style or something like this, if we inject some props here and we mutate these props, the component will re-render again. So and re-render and inside virtual DOM, and later React will try to find the best way to update the real DOM. So every time that we saw render here, we are talking about the render in memory. So later we are going to React. It's going to find the best way to update this component using the native components or the real DOM, etc. So we are mutating just the virtual DOM here. Okay. So we have another concept that is pretty amazing, and it's a little bit complex because we are going to talk a little bit about, it's almost like Inception. We are creating components inside components, but a very common question is, what is a high order component? So in JavaScript we have something that is called high order functions. High order functions are functions that receives functions, and high order components are functions that receive components and create another component from this. So we have a component, we have a function, and we have and this function receives a component inside of it. So we can send, using parents, a component to this function, and this function returns a new component. So we are trying to create components or enhancing components using functional programming. So we are passing components as parameters. Okay, so why is this so important? Because it's really good for code reuse. So we can reuse a lot of code just using high order components. So I don't know if it's easier to see here, but let me see here if it's clear. Just a second. This code is very small. Just a second. I will try to, no, it's not possible. Let me try to increase here. Here. Just a second. Oh no. I'm trying just to increase this. 1 second. I'm just trying to make this bigger. The code is not so nice here. Yeah. So I think now it's easier to use this thing. So here I created a component or a high order component using it's a component that can we can reuse the HTTP REST API consumption. So we can just pass a URL, and this high order component will create another component where we inject the data that is coming from one URL. So here it's the most important thing here. We have this function with HTTP. We have the wrapped component that it's the component that it's that we are passing to this function. Later we have an URL that we are passing to, and the most important thing here, we are returning class extends component. So we are returning a component, a new component. So it's a function that is receiving a component and some other parameters, and we are returning a new class or a new kind of component. And this new kind of component will render the wrapped component, so the component that we injected with some props injected. So we are injecting data, we are injecting is loading, for example, and we can pass all other props as well here. So in fact we are like creating a cover over this component, and we are injecting more behavior inside this component just using props. So we are just injecting using props here. So we are injecting this behavior on the wrapped component. So it's pretty amazing to reuse code, because we can pass all components that we are need, for example, here as a wrapped component. We are going to have an enhanced version of this component. So a new component here that's it's better than the other one. And all this complexity here will make our life easier, because take a look on this. We have just a functional stateless component here. So user agent, for example, we receive props here, and we render just H1, and I put here just to show everything that we are receiving using props. And later, instead of exporting the user agent component, we enhance this component using with HTTP that we show here. So in this case, we are passing the simple component here, and we are passing the one URL that this with HTTP are going to use to grab the data. So in this case here, we are using Axios, and it's getting the data from here. So we are saving a lot of requests and code here just using high order components. So it's instead of trying to extend a custom component, it's not a good practice in React. So it's not a good practice to create a component that is not extending, for example, component. So it's not a good practice. So we can't create better grading, for example, and extends grading. It's not a good practice. So instead of doing this, what we can do? We can create high order component, and we can inject this functionality inside the component. So when should I use it? So when I need to use high order components. So when I want to reuse code, when for some reason I thought that I need to use extends, for example, so it's a good signal that we need to use a high order component. And one of the uses of high order components, it's when we want to separate behavior from presentation. So here we have all the behaviors, so how to grab the data inside the server and etc. And here we just have how to show the data. So it's better keep things like this. So we have one side or in one component how to deal with the data or how to grab the data, and the other hand we have how to show this on screen. So it's pretty amazing. We can reuse, we can separate concerns and etc. Just use this approach here. Okay. So when I should use it, I already said, and some examples of high order components. If everyone is already used Redux, for example, so Redux uses connect. So Redux tries to separate the state and how we mutate the state from the rest of the components, and we use a higher component called connect. So we connect our component to Redux. So for example, here I have an example of a connected component using Redux. We have the same idea, so we have connect here, that is the high order component. We have some props here that we pass for this function, and later we have the component itself. So the component itself is pretty simple, and we just use Redux to inject some behavior inside of it and to select which data it's important to us to show inside this component. So we can select which data we want to show, and we can select which action we can have access as well. So it's pretty useful, and if for some reason they asked you examples in the market where we can use high order components, or example that models that use high order components, we can talk about connect. It's a very nice example of high order component. Okay. So I already talked about this a little bit. So what's the difference between presentational components and containers? So here I'm going to talk about some features and some characteristics that Dana Brov said. So it's pretty amazing. So I have the search here. It's an amazing post. So basically, presentational components are concerned with how things look. So which HTML tags we are going to use and something like this. So how things will look on the screen. So presentational components are how they look on the screen. So that's why I said that we are not concerned about MVC and etc. because we are using a different approach. It's not the same thing, MVC and etc. So it's a little bit different. Okay, so presentational, how things look, and we may contain other presentational components inside the presentational component, and we can contain other containers too, so we can mix them together. We can use this.props.children, so we can put a component inside this component, so it's perfect too. And one of the things that is pretty amazing, presentational components have no dependencies of the rest of the app. So we are not talking how to grab data from a REST server. So we are going to say how to show this H1 here. So it's different. So it's the reason that a presentational component exists is different from the other type of component. So it's just how things looks on the screen. So for example, it don't specify how the data is loaded or mutated. So it's not the concern of this kind of component. So it just receives data. And we receive data and callbacks. So if we need to call some action, we are going to inject this using props. And it's very rare when we have this kind of components having their own state. And one example of this is the toggle button, for example, that just show or hide something inside the same component. So this state showing or hiding this something inside the component it does not need to be aware of the rest of the application. So we don't need to send to other components if we are showing or not something inside that component. So when they use their own state. It's for just this, a state that used inside the same component. So very simple things. And it's better when we can write this kind of components using functional stateless components. So it's better to use this example. And in this article from Dan Abramov, they cite some example. For example, page, sidebar, story, user info, list, customer, or something like this. So it's just how the information looks like. So how we can show this information on the screen. Okay. And on the other hand, we have containers that are concerned with how things work. So it's different from presentational. So we are concerned more how we are getting data from the server, which action we can use, and etc. So this is the kind of components that we named as containers. And these containers can have presentational and containers components as well. And usually containers doesn't have HTML, so it's just put some other components. So it's a good practice. Don't put some HTML inside of it. So containers just use containers and just use presentational components. And usually containers inject or provide data and behavior to other components. So that's why containers exist. So we can isolate behavior from how things look. So it's pretty amazing. So for example, if we want to call Flux or call Redux actions, for example, we can inject from containers to the presentational components. So it's very nice. Usually they are stateful, so they can handle the state, they can store the state. We can use it as a high order component, like we saw before. And we have some other examples here, so connect, create container, and etc. And some examples: user page, follower, sidebar, store container, follow the user list. So some examples here. Here we have the full post from Dan Abramov. Dan Abramov is the creator of Redux. So, and currently he's working on the React core team. So he's a very, very nice guy. So later try to read this post. Is very, very nice. I will send the presentation to you later, so you can get this link as well. So this leads us to another question. So what is Redux? Should I need Redux? Should I need it in my project? So Redux is basically it's a predictable state container for JavaScript apps. I got this from the official site, and what we can learn from this sentence. Redux is predictable. So one of the things that Redux tries to isolate its side effects. So basically we have everything in an order that we can predictable say the next state of the application. So if we have the application here right now and we inject some action here, every time we need to go to this state here. So that's why it's predictable. So we try to avoid side effects, we try to avoid weird behavior using Redux. So that's why it's so important, and that's why many companies are using Redux. So we can bring this predictable to our code. And the nice thing about Redux, it helps you write applications that behave consistently. So it's nice because we have this application and we can have the same features and the same story and etc. from Redux, running the same way in client, in server, in native, in VR, in whatever. So since this is just JavaScript, we can use it everywhere. We can create a Node.js application, for example, using Redux. It's not it's not a very good practice. We can try to do this, but if we want, we can create this kind of thing. So it's pretty amazing. And one of the things that I think it's amazing about Redux, it's very easy to test. So we can test every aspect of the Redux using unit testing, because Redux is just basic JavaScript. So it's per functions, it is just simple objects. So it's amazing for testing. So right now we talked two times or twice that something is really good for testing. I don't know if you paid attention to this, but I talked to you about the functional status components that's very good to test, and right now I'm talking about Redux that is very good to test. So we can test more, or we can cover more with tests using React. So if we thought about the ecosystem, we can unit testing more things than before. Okay, so but basically Redux is just for handle the app state. So handle how data is stored and changed or mutable or mutated inside the application. Okay, so the first concept that we need to talk here the first thing that we are going to talk here is about store. So the first concept inside Redux that we need to understand is store. So it's pretty common that we heard about Redux and store, and everyone says store is the single source of truth. So every data, any data that we have inside our application needs to be kept inside store. So we need to put them in store, and the application will respond or render based on this store. So it's the single source of truth. So we have just one store per application. So if we have an application, we will just have one store. And what is that store? Is just one simple object or a variable or anything. So we can think of store like a JavaScript object. So very simple, very simple. And store will hold the application state. So it's pretty amazing. And it allows the access to the state using getState. So we can store, for example, we can use store.getState, and we can get the object that is inside the store. And we can mutate or update the state using dispatch and passing some action to it. And we have some register that listens to these changes, to those changes. So every time that store is changing, the store let something know that is changing something. So and other things that we have here, for example, handles unregistering of listeners via the functional. But the most important thing, we have store, and we have another model that is called we have store, and we have Redux, and later we have React Redux. So React Redux is a kind of binding. So we don't need to use getState, we don't need to use subscribe and etc., because React Redux is just doing this to us. So it's pretty amazing. So we just need to pay attention to how to use this in a simpler way. So because we don't need to deal with the subscription and etc. So it's pretty amazing. Other concept that we have, so we have store. and later we have actions. So actions basically it's a mutation that we are going to create. So for example, if I want to change something, I cannot change directly the store, so I need to dispatch an action, and this action basically has a type and a payload. And another thing that is very nice is just a simple JavaScript object, so it's very simple. And again, we dispatch it against the store using dispatch function. So we apply this action to the store, or dispatch this action through the store. And later we have reducers that the store calls these reducers passing the action. So the store gets the action for, oh, I need to do something with this. So reducers take care of this for me. And the reducers are just JavaScript functions. So per functions, and these functions will receive the current state, so the current state that is stored inside the store, and will receive the action too, and later will return a new state based on this action. So for example, increment in 1, for example. So it's an action, and we can create a new state where we store the value there +1, for example. So it's pretty amazing. And another thing that is pretty amazing here, it's easy to unit test. So I said this 3 times already. So functional status components are easy to test, Redux are easy to test, and reducers inside Redux are easy to test, unit test. So we can test a lot of things inside React. So it's a pretty good thing to know. So we can apply tests in every single part of our application. We can use this in components. We can use this in the state management. So we can use this kind of concepts everywhere. And the most important thing about reducers, they are predictable. So since they are per functions, so per functions are functions that just relies on the parameters. So for example, if I have this reducer that receives just store, the current store or the current state, and an action, the return of this function is just it's just based on these 2 parameters. So this is a per function. Later I tried to get some videos from DevPlano. There we have some videos about per functions, some about React and etc. Then can bring to you some of these concepts from JavaScript that I use it a lot inside React. Okay. Let me just drink a little bit of water. So really the most asked question: should I need Redux? So I saw some questions here talking about the new context API, and we are going to talk about this in a minute. But should I really need Redux? So the most problematic thing about Redux, everyone is trying to understand Redux or get the conclusion about Redux using in a very small application. So for very small application, we don't need Redux. So if we are creating a to-do app or creating a very simple application that are not going to scale, we don't need. So we don't need Redux for this. So that's the problem. Everyone that I heard talking about Redux, everyone says, Redux is too complex, it's too many code for simple things, etc. So I don't need this. it's better for whatever, I'm not going to use this, it's not make sense, and etc. But the most important thing, Redux makes sense when we are starting to scale the application. So when we have a lot of use cases, we have a lot of features inside the application, Redux start bringing more power to the application. So why this? Because the state of the component or the app start to inflate too much. So we have a lot of things to do. We have many states. So when we started to scaling things without Redux, we have the state of the application sometimes split between some components. So it's hard to maintain this kind of application. So if you want to really try Redux, Redux imagining that you are going to scale this. So I've been working with Redux for almost two years, and the project that I was working on is a React Native app, and we have Redux everywhere. So it's pretty amazing. It's very important to the project, because I don't need to try to understand what the other developer was working or was trying to do, because it's just a matter of keep the store and the state inside the store healthy. And if we do this, we can make everything inside the application better. So if you are thinking, Redux is too much, try to use Redux in a bigger project, okay? Another thing that is very, very nice about Redux, I studied in INPE here in Brazil, and there they created some software for satellites and rockets and etc. And everything is based on this kind of thing. So we try to design the system using state. So we can think in Redux and React as a finite machine state. So if we think about this, we can get a better description of the application, because we can just describe our application based on states. So for example, the user is logged in, the user is not logged in. So we can change the entire application, the entire screen based on this. And later we can mutate more the state. So it makes sense. So React makes sense, Redux makes sense, but we need to be open-minded to understand that it's better for bigger projects, okay? And the best thing about this, we can ensure, if we code correctly, we can ensure the state of the application. So if the state is okay, we just need to render it correctly. So the React part of this puzzle is just to show the information on the screen. So Redux will take care of the data, and React will take care of how to show this data on the screen. Okay? So guys, I'm going to read some of the questions here. Here is my website, devplano.com, or you can send an email to me, contato@devplano.com. Just a little bit of things. We are going to create a hands-on event about ReactJS. It's free, it's online in March 29. The address is devplano.com/hands-on-reactjs. So we are going to cover some topics. We are going to release a project, put in production, etc. using React. So probably would be something like 6 or 8 hours of React content that we are going to produce and share with you. Okay, so let's get the questions here. Just 1 second, because there's a lot of messages here. So the first one, Pedro asked, why should we use Flux once we have Redux? It depends on the team. So Flux, we have Redux is based on Flux, but Redux we have less actors. So we just have actions, reducers, and the store. And in Flux we have more things and we have more possibilities. So we can it's not the same life cycle. So it's a little bit different. Flux influenced the Redux, but it's two flavors. So there are teams that choose Flux, there are teams that choose Redux. Redux is more famous, so it started to get more used. So it's just a matter of which one the team likes the most. So it really depends on the team, okay? AS3. Okay. Okay, Faustino said, what? I worked with AS3, but I don't think they are anything alike. Yes, they are alike. It's strange. AS3 is ActionScript 3. It's from Flash from many years ago. They are the same thing. Flux is the same Flux from ActionScript 3. Okay, so it's when we use Flux and Flex in Flash, we can mutate the state. That we have the bindings and etc. It's the same from that time. Okay. Jefferson Hayes, what can we expect in challenge? Jefferson, what I'm seeing here, you can expect a lot of conceptual questions. So every time that I'm passing through a screening process, or I've been interviewed, for example, they ask this kind of questions here. So why you should use Redux, or why should I use, for example, functional status components? Why should I use higher order components? So this kind of questions is asked a lot during interviews, okay? Bruno Brustolonini, Skip uses React for mobile. Yes, they use. And about the Java Kotlin for Android and Swift for iOS. So Bruno, one of the most important things to understand here, let me show something here. So guys, imagine the scenario. So we have this component here and etc. So when we are talking about React Native, this component here will be rendered or inside the React Native platform. So for example, we can use instead of H1, we can use text, or we can use view, or we can use list view, or we can use image. So we have other components. If we want something that is not available directly from React Native, so for example, I need Google Maps, I need a map. So if I need a map, I need to create the other side of the translator. So remember, virtual DOM, and later we convert this to native components. So when we need to do this, we need to create this bridge using Java, Kotlin, and Swift or Objective-C to do this other hand. So we need to create this translator. So something that we are going to get from virtual DOM and know how to put this in the native platform. Okay, so we can use Java, Kotlin, and Swift and Objective-C to create those parts that are not yet created using React Native. Okay. Bruno Versosa, ReactJS might not be the goal of the event since they write native apps. So I think we should learn React Native. Bruno, the first thing, if you are going to study React Native, my advice to you is study React. So one of the things that you need to understand, as Bruno asked, how to create, for example, a native model that handles some custom component, for example. But if you want to understand how React works or how React Native works, it's the same from React itself. So it's the same React. We are creating the same virtual DOM, so it's the same thing. Okay. So if we learn React, if we will learn how React works, how to mutate the virtual DOM, how to keep the state healthy, and etc., we are studying React Native as well. Okay. Bruno Brustoloni, React is not native for mobile or for mobile. Yes, React is native for mobile. So we get the virtual DOM, and virtual DOM is translated to native components. Okay, so it's native. Okay. Bruno Versosa, React Native plus ReactJS interact together. Yes, ReactJS builds the virtual DOM, and React Native gets this virtual DOM and translates to native components. Okay, so for example, if my virtual DOM has a text, React Native will get this tree that has a text inside of it, and will put this inside the app, inside the native part. Okay. Pedro Barat, they use the same concept. Okay. Lucas Costa, the syntax between ReactJS and React Native are almost the same. Lucas, they are the same. The only thing that is different are the components. So in React for Web or React DOM, we are going to use paragraph or a p tag or a div or a span or etc. And React Native, we are going to use other components. We are going to use view, text, and etc. But the way we are creating these apps or those apps are the same in both platforms. Okay. Skip develops native. Skip develops native iOS and Android apps, but they are planning to migrate them to React Native. I really don't know about this, but the last project that I was involved was exactly the same. So they had the iOS version, and I was working on porting this to React Native. So it's pretty doable and common scenario. Okay, trying to port the pure native to the React Native version. As Pedro Baracho said here, usually you learn React first and then move to React Native. It's a good approach. So if you learn React, the React ecosystem first, it's easier to go to React Native. Okay. Luis Guilherme Cruz, someone know if we can port a web application created with ReactJS to React Native? We can. Okay, it's not. There are some projects that are trying to migrate this. So where is div, they try to translate to view and etc. But some aspects are a little bit different. So we can share some code there. So for example, we can share the Redux thing. So we can share the state of the application, how we deal with the state of the application, and later we can just render this differently. Another thing that is very important, we can have this even inside React Native. So we can have components that renders in a way in Android and renders in another way in iOS. So it's amazing, and we can do this kind of separation, for example. It's not mandatory, but we can do this. Bruno Versosa, ReactJS code like model. ReactJS code is like model, DAO, and controllers. The stuff are reusable in React Native code. Yes, Bruno, we can share those business models or functions between two platforms. Okay, it's just JavaScript, so we can share some React JS from web to React Native when we are not touching the screen, for example. Okay. Can I write these parts of code? Yes, as I said, we can reuse some code between the platforms. Luis Guilherme Cruz, so my web application can run React Native without updating anything in my code? No, you need to make some changes, okay? So it's not possible to get a pure ReactJS web application and just run as a React Native. We need to make some changes to be able to do this, okay? As Pedro Baracho said, React is just the concept of how to create components, and when we are using this in web, it's different from using from React Native. They are only components, and the components are different from different platforms. Okay. Yeah, so Bruno answered too, because they have different UIs, they have different components. About performance, Bruno Brustolini asked, React is pretty fast, so we have some things that we need to avoid. For example, we need to avoid updating or making the component update when it's not needed. So if we can do this, it's better. But React has a very nice performance. So because we build the tree structure first, and later we React tries to translate this. So this is pretty fast. So about the performance, React has a very good performance. Okay, of course depends on the team, depends on the developers, and etc. But natively or it's not something that is related to the core of React to be slow. Okay. Bruno Versosa tried in a small project and worked smoothly. Very nice. Okay. Of course. Guys, just a second. I'm trying to scroll down here. Lucas Fonseca. The syntax is pretty much the same, exactly. Okay. Yes, Felipe Molina said something that is really important here. There is no models and controllers. Everything is designed a little bit different. So we are going to encapsulate, we are going to create apps just compounding components. So we are starting create a component and create another component that holds this component, and we can start putting one component inside another. So it's different design pattern, let's say this way, okay? Exactly, thank you. Yes, as everyone is saying here, we can organize a little bit different. So we can put in some folders. So there are some things that separate, for example, presentational components from containers components. So there are ways of keeping things organized, for example, okay? Lucas Costa Oliveira, I kind of messed up my first project because I did not follow a structure. One of the things that I really believe about React, sometimes we try to organize before time. So, for example, if we try to use Redux in a simple application, we are going to not like React as if we do this, for example, in a huge application. So sometimes we start organizing things too earlier. So it's it's not that good because we can start organizing the wrong way, for example. So I really like to start creating some scenarios inside the app and later try to organize in a way that makes sense to the application. So maybe it's not the best way to keep, for example, containers separated from the presentational ones. So it depends a lot of the project, okay? Bruno Bustolini, Android there is a back physical. We are talking about the back button, and iOS not. So how can we deal with this? So usually we have some components and models that handle the navigation inside React Native. So when we have those components know how to deal with this. So we can set how we are going to behave when we receive a back button. So we can do this, okay? So we can treat or handle this difference in platform very smoothly, okay? Yes, as Pedro Baracho said here, Cordova, Ionic, and other stuff uses WebView, so it's just a browser inside the app, and React Native use native components like UI, view, text, and etc. Exactly, okay? Philippe, like Ionic it's too, looks too, but performance-wise there is no comparison. React just performs better. Yes, React looks like looks and feel like native, so it's amazing. Did React use JavaScript framework from iOS to create a bridge between JavaScript and native code? I don't know, but it's something that we can try to find something about. Okay, Victor? JavaScript core, I don't know from top of my mind, I don't know. Okay. Lucas Costa, from what I learned, React Native does not use NJS code. All the components that are going to be used has a similar Swift code. Yes, we have the tree structure in memory, and we have this React Native guy that is translating to React to native components. Okay, so we have a mirror there. So if we have a view here, we have a mirror that is writing as a native component. Okay. But React Native uses JavaScript code, as Felipe Molina said. So everything that we are dealing with, so for example, JSX, Redux, and etc., inside React Native is JavaScript. So later there's another layer there that is translating to native components. Okay. Okay. One of the things that Felipe Molina said is amazing, and it's pretty what we need to do. So if we are studying React and React Native, we are going to be a better JavaScript developer too, because we are going to use a lot of concepts from pure JavaScript. Okay. Pedro Banacho, this is like decorator pattern. I think it's about higher components. Felipe Molina already answered here. Robson, it's okay for me. Don't worry, it's fine. Great example, very useful. Thank you, Felipe. Bruno Brustoloni, about tests. How create a unit test, integration test, end-to-end test on React. So the unit test is easy. Just let me see if I can show something to you here. I think here. Okay. So just 1 second. So if we are going to test our code, unit testing our component, one of the things that we need to do, for example, we need to see if the component renders. So we can test here using ReactDOM, for example, that creates a DOM for testing. But we have other approach, for example, that just does shallow rendering. So we are not creating the component itself. We are just rendering inside memory, and we can just see if the component is creating the right structure, the right tree structure. So the test, basically, we are just comparing if we inject some props on the component, if we got the right output. So basically this. So let me get another. This example is not a very good one. Let me show a different one here. Enzyme. So for example, let's see here. Yeah, here. So for example, this is a test for a component. So we have my component here, and we have a unit test case here. So it renders a tree full component. So what they are trying to do here, they are trying to render my component, and later we just need to expect that we can find a full component inside of it. Or in this case, we need to have 3 components. So we are just testing if the component is rendering correctly to the virtual DOM, okay? So it's easier to test. We don't need to use a browser for this. This guy here is called Enzyme, so it's from Airbnb. So we can use this to test the code. I prefer using this than using the other options that we have on the ecosystem. So here it's easier to create tests. Okay, let me just come back here. Just 1 second, I lost my screen. So Bruno, about the unit testing is like that. So we can do this thing. About integration tests, we can use shallow rendering too. So we can render the components in depth. So we can render more children of that component. So we can check this too. And we can use Selenium and etc. to create end-to-end tests. So when we are trying to use end-to-end, we can just use in regular browsers. But the fact is, the regular tests that we are creating is, for example, the most of the tests that we are creating is just using unit testing. So we can test more often using unit testing than we using end-to-end tests and etc. Okay. So as Felipe Molina said, JS is the most used library for testing. Yes. Other connected components or other higher order components with router. Okay, exactly. Lucas Costa, I want to see you explain Redux in less than a week. Took me a month to learn the basics, and I'm still learning. It's not so hard to understand. One of the things that I think that I really think it's important to understand Redux, try to create an example without using React. So create an example using Node.js, for example. So try to use just JavaScript and understand what is happening inside Redux before trying to apply to React directly, okay? Daniel Guimarães, what do you think about using context APIs as a replacement for Redux? I think it's good. So the new context API is very nice, but I think we will have space for both, because Redux it's almost like a convention. So it's better than we try to use, for example, context API in our own way. So if we talked about Redux in a way of trying to introduce a pattern, it's a good way. But it depends on the case. So maybe in a project, the most it's important to use context API, or any other situation is better use Redux. Okay. In my opinion, I prefer to use Redux because we can ensure a pattern. Okay. Guys, I'm not going to answer anything about Ionic because I don't use Ionic on my daily basis, so it's not a thing to me. Okay. Luis Guilherme Cruz, in my opinion, your components with Redux become your application more complex, but also become more independent the rendering of your components. Luis Guilherme, what I think, Redux is not transforming your app in a more complex one. So if you are going to use in complex applications where Redux can make the difference, I think it's not increasing the complexity. Okay. So if we are trying to use in a simple project, I really agree with you. It's almost a waste of time. Okay. Yes, as Felipe Molina said, in medium to big application, it becomes a real pain to pass down props and handle the state. Exactly. Yes, Pedro Baracho said that there is a blog post with Dan Abramov on Medium called "Do I Need Redux on My App?" So I read this content as well. It's pretty amazing. I agree with Felipe, and some components more simple. Okay, Redux forces you to describe application state and mutations in a clear and concise way. Yes, Pedro Barras says Redux forces you to describe your application state and mutations in a clear and concise way. Exactly. So we are going to think in an application like a state machine. So it's more predictable. So we can expect some. It's easier to know where we are going. So it's better this way. Okay. Sorry. Just a second because I lost where I was. Just a second. Where I guys, just a second. I scrolled the screen and I messed it up here. Okay. Yeah, okay. So Reginaldo Marcelo dos Santos, question: can I consider Redux as the service factor in AngularJS? I don't know. It's been a while since I don't use AngularJS, so I don't know. Okay. Guys, try to do something for yourself. Try not to anchorate or to get those concepts outside. So because sometimes we anchor our concept in something that is not really the same thing. So to anchor really and get the concept very well, we need to really understand the concept in both sides. So I prefer you create something from scratch when we are dealing with Redux and etc. because it's easier. Okay. I would avoid this kind of. Yes, as Felipe Molina said, I hate this kind of comparisons because we need to control the concept in both sides to do a fair comparison. Okay. Caio Faustino, from purely native Android dev like me. Okay, you are programming just in Java. This is a whole new style of programming. Yes, it's a declarative way of programming or reactive way of programming. I saw that it's possible to mix Java and React. Yes, you can create the part that translates the DOM from something that is JavaScript to the native part, okay? So in general, React Native app is all JS. Yes, it's written in JavaScript, but it's converted to native components, okay? So it's written in JavaScript, we put the behaviors and etc. in JavaScript, but we need to convert this to native components, okay? Okay. Pedro Baracho, I think you can write custom components in Java and integrate them with React Native. Yes, exactly, Pedro. Even other things like connecting to a local database, for example, all.js. Yes, Caio Faustino. For example, we have async storage, if I'm not wrong, in React Native, where we can store things on the mobile device. So we can use JavaScript to do this. So we can use promises, you can use async await, we can use anything, okay? It's just JavaScript. On the other hand, we can have some models that are native code written in Java or Swift that can write this data on the device as well. So we have many situations there, okay? Kyle Justina, I wasn't able to go through all videos from that plan yet, just the first. Take your time, so it will be good if you could do this before the hackathon or the fair. But the videos are public, so you can enjoy later too. Pedro Durek, I've seen a lot of people using Jest with Enzyme. Would you recommend it? Yes. It's faster for testing, okay? And there's another guy on the block right now that's called Ava. So it can run the test in parallel, so it's good too. So we can change, for example, Jest for Ava as well, okay? Paulo Batista, can exist live in big React projects without Redux and etc. if they are correctly organized? Yes, you can do this. You are going to need to create a lot of high order components to organize the behavior, but it's possible, okay? I created, it's not a huge project, but I already created some projects where I connected Firebase to it using high order components. So I create some high order components to connect Firebase to React, and I don't need to use, for example, Redux. So it's possible, it's doable, okay? Felipe Molina, you don't connect to a database using React. React is just the UI portion of our app. Felipe, you are right, but in mobile devices we can have a copy inside the device. So if we are trying to keep the app responsive when we are offline, we need to store a small database inside the app. Okay, so we can have the database inside a mobile app. Okay, and when we are using the web version, we can cache this too, so we can use local storage and etc. to store a cache as well. So in fact, it's a database. Okay. Maria Carolina Higo, do React interviewers often ask about models, libraries other than Redux? It depends on the position. Okay, so for example, in Scripted Dishes, if I'm not wrong, they are pretty clear about Redux and React. usually they try to explain this on the position. But one of the things that it's a kind of advice for you. Try to read or to do some research about the most used libraries, just to know the name. So for example, for navigation, React Router DOM. For navigation in React Native, for example, React Navigation, or etc. So just try to know the names and know what those components do, and I think we are good to go. Okay. Beatriz de Araújo, congrats! Your tips will help us a lot. Your tips will help us a lot. Thank you for your comment. Okay, Beatriz. Caio Faustino, exactly. How do I connect the React UI with the rest of the app logic in mobile? Exactly the same. So, for example, we can let's see here, React Native async storage example. For example, if we want to store something, we can use this inside the component. So await async storage dot set item, and we can set an item inside of it. So we can call this from a component, from a container component. Okay. So we can store this inside using React. Okay. Okay, Kai. Philip Molina, generally you would make a request to a RESTful API and get all the data you need. Yes, but sometimes you need to store it locally too. Okay. Victor Cazé, how React Native handle with threading? So it's the same question that we have about JavaScript. So usually we don't have threads inside JavaScript. I think everyone knows this. So JavaScript is not multi-threading, but when we are dealing with native code, this binding, this bridge between the JavaScript and the native code can have some threading, but on the side of JavaScript, to us, it's just async operations. So we don't see this as multi-threading. Okay. So inside React, we don't need to deal with threading, right? So, for example, maybe you are creating something in Java for Android and creating this binding for React Native. Maybe inside your Java code, you need to create threads and etc. But for React Native, this kind of thing is not aware to React Native. React Native is just async operations, okay? Danega01 question: can you speak about React Flow? Like should update, did you mount? Sure. I forgot to put there, but what you asked, it's called component life cycle, or how the component is mounted in the screen and how is unmounted from the screen. So basically we have, let me get here, React life cycle. So basically we have some methods that are used. So for example, we have the constructor, we have the component will mount. So before mounting the component on the screen, we call this, correct, before mounting this in virtual DOM, we call component will mount. Later we call the render, that we are mounting the component. Later component did mount, so we put the component on the virtual DOM, and later we can update this component. So component will receive props. So if we are changing the props that we are injecting on the component, we have another method called should component update, where we can control whether we are allowing the component to update or not. Later we call render again, and later we call component did update again. And when we remove the component from the virtual DOM, we call the component will unmount. So we are unmounting it from the virtual DOM. And if we got some problem, for example, we got the component did catch. So we are catching some error from inside of the component, okay? So those methods are called during the life cycle of the component. So from the beginning, from putting the component inside the virtual DOM, from removing it and updating it on the tree, okay? So this is exactly that Victor Scotto asked too, the life cycle of the components, okay? Leonardo Bruno Lima, question, do you think it's a good approach to use an API middleware instead of Redux Tank? Doing this, I can, for example, add the auth headers in one place. Let's see. I really don't like Redux Tank. Let's just make it clear. Everything that I said here about Redux is for Redux in a sync way. So, for example, if you are trying to get something from an API, Redux needs some help because it's not very clear. It's not so easy to make this async operations. So, but we have other models that help us with this. So for example, Redux Tank is one of them. Why I don't like Redux Tank? Redux Tank, it's amazing. It works well for handling and linking Redux with async operations. But we can have like a callback hell inside Redux Tank. So I really prefer Redux sagas. To me, it's a little bit easier to control things, but it depends on the structure. So if we are trying to inject, for example, as I did in high order component, inject with HTTP in each component, I think you don't need the Redux at all. So we can just handle using high order components. But let me think about your. I didn't use yet as middleware, API middleware inside Redux. I really don't have an answer for this, if it's a good approach or not. But I really don't like Redux Tank a lot. So try later, Leonardo, to test this guy here, Redux Saga. Okay, this is another approach, and usually I use this guy here. Okay, custom middleware. Okay, Maragoni Jr. Will the challenge be only in React Native? I don't think so, because React is React. Okay. Already explained the life cycle. How can we, Victor Scotto, how can we define what type of each properties? As Walter Jr. said, we have prop types where we can set the type of the props. I didn't get what the getting to the bottom. At this pace, he's never getting to the bottom. I'm closer. Life cycles is pretty straightforward. Yes, exactly what Rafael Campos said. Thiago is show us. I know that we are able to render React on server, but the entire application should be rendered on the server, or can I make a React web app render specific components on server only? Thiago, it's up to you. It's all virtual DOM. You can choose between rendering everything or rendering just a part of the application. It's up to you, okay? Yes, as Rafael Campos said, you can use Next or Gatsby, okay? Victor Casar, it's easy to debug the translated native code. A little bit. So we have a lot of tools for this. So the tooling is very nice. So it's not so difficult, but it's possible. Okay. Rafael Campos said that we usually debug the code in JavaScript through the browser. Yes, but the native code, probably we need different tools for this. But yes, I just use it to create Java for Android, but it's not so hard to debug, okay? I'm not remember how I debug, but I debugged. I don't remember clearly, but I think it's not so difficult to do, okay? Bye, Beatriz. Leonardo Sagansky, do they pretend or do they intend to use only reactive? I'm working on native projects for many years using Kotlin, Java, Swift, and Object-C. Don't I have any chance? Do I never worked with React? Just Leonardo, try to keep the vocabulary a little bit straightforward. So reactive, it's different from React Native, okay? So React is a thing, React Native another thing, and reactive another thing, okay? So if you use this stack, so if you are able to create native apps, yes, you can help them, okay? So try to understand a little bit more about React and the ecosystem, and you can work on these custom components, okay? So you can create this binding between the native components to the version inside React Native, okay? Victor Scotto, the hackathon may be an on-off app with Google Maps API communication. I don't know, okay, but sometimes some interviewers just ask some questions about how you would create something. So you have this problem, how would you solve this problem? So sometimes you don't need to write code, okay? Philip Molina, sorry guys for the wrong answers about native. No problem, we are all learners here, okay? You are exchange experience, so nothing to worry about, nothing to try to okay, it's okay, it's not a problem, okay? We are all learners here, okay? Pedro, why we should use constructor? Also, we can use arrow function for event handler. We can use constructor for defining the initial state of a small component, for example. So we can use this as a way of set the state for the initial state for the component, for example. Okay. Rafael Campos, arrow functions has auto binding, so you don't need just for bindings now. Not in fact, it's not auto binding, okay? Arrow function just use the this keyword or the this reference or the parent, okay? So for example, if you have a arrow function inside render function, so if you are calling it depends, but if you have a arrow function inside the render method, they are sharing the same this, okay? But if you do this outside of the render, so for example, let me show something to you. Imagine this scenario here. Yes. So imagine we are creating, for example, import React from React, and for example, class extend React.component render, and here, for example, return button on click. For example, imagine that we have this and I create some arrow function here and handler. So imagine this scenario here, this dot handler. So for example, just a second. Okay. So imagine this scenario here. I have, for example, this guy here. So I have this arrow function here, and I have this keyword inside this arrow function. So this is not auto-binding, okay? This keyword is referring to the this from render, okay? So, for example, if inside handler I try to do this set state, for example, this kind of thing is not going to work, okay? Because here this refers to other thing, okay? So it's different. We need to bind this to this. So we need to create a constructor. We need to do this, and later we need to do this. So this dot handler, it's equals this dot handler dot bind this. So now this is the same from this, is the same from this. So when we are using arrow functions, we need to be aware of this, okay? So this here is referring to the this that is accessible through render, okay? Pedro, yes, Pedro, we can start the state using static, okay? We can use, I don't remember for static state, and we can start this. I don't remember very well, but I think it's something like this, or here, no, it's equals. I don't remember if it's equals because it's complaining here, but we can create state this way. So yeah, guys, but it's just JavaScript, so we can work on this. It's just a flavor. So some people prefers to use this way. Some people prefers to use this way, for example. So we have different flavors to use this guy here. Okay. Pedro Baracho, great class. Tulio, good job. Thank you, Pedro. Guys, I need to go because my voice is vanishing, so I'm becoming voiceless. So guys, let me show where is the just 1 second. Where is this? Where is this? Here, guys. If you have any question, don't let this be a roadblock to you. So try to contact me on contact@devplano.com. Or tuliofaria@devplano.com. Okay, so just ask questions there. It's I'm glad to help, so it's not a problem at all. And please, if you are available in March 29, we are going to create this event. Will be very awesome because in this version, we are going to create a really impressive app, and we are going to release this as a free software and an open source software. And the idea is to use this software as a way of enlighten your GitHub account, and you can have a project delivered to the client as well. So we are going to use this in philanthropic institutions. So for example, we can have I forgot the name in English, but we can help other people creating React projects. So try to go to this URL. There we are going to explain everything about this event to you. So my personal goal with this hands-on about React is to get more entities helped with this initiative, okay? So I'm pretty excited about this, so I think it will be amazing. So guys, thank you a lot for your time today. And I really tried to help with some topics that I was already faced during interviews. So it will be, I'm very glad to be here. So I'm very glad to share with you some great content, okay? And thank for the interaction. It's amazing having all of you here. So best of luck for you all. Try to do your best, and if you need something, you can count on me. Just drop a line to me on contato@devplano.com, and I'm really glad to help you with this journey, okay? I'm helping a lot of developers with this journey, so we are trying to make some really good progress with React Native and React. And if I can share some personal stuff with you, React really changed my life, okay? So React is amazing. I started working with React for international companies like 1.5 years ago, if I'm not wrong, and it really changed my life, okay? So I really hope that React can do this for you as well, okay? Guys, thank you a lot. Luiz Guilherme, Esquiel, Joel, Vitor, Felipe, Thiago, Felipe Molina, Demarcos, Victor Scotto, Rafael Campos, Cláudio, Maria Carolina, Robson, Victor Sampaio, Pedro Baracho, and all of you. Thank you a lot for your time. And I can see you on the next video here in DevPlano or in a Vanhack event. So thank you a lot. Have a good evening and a good night. Thank you a lot, guys. See you.